Life is not about collecting sympathy, it's about building strength. Too many people walk around with a story that says, "Look at what I'm going through, look at how hard it is for me." But here's the truth, when you constantly tell people your problems, you reinforce your identity as someone who is stuck, powerless, and needy. And the more you tell that story, the more you believe it. If you want to change your life, you have to stop broadcasting your pain and start broadcasting your power. Nobody is coming to save you. People may care for a moment, but they are focused on their own lives, their own struggles, their own survival. What moves the world is not your suffering, it's your strength. What inspires people is not your excuse, it's your example. So today, I want to give you 3 keys to stop telling people your problems and start building the kind of life that speaks louder than any struggle ever could. Every single day, people wake up rehearsing their pain. They wake up thinking about what's not working, who betrayed them, what opportunity slipped through their hands, or what problem seems impossible to solve. And the truth is, the more you rehearse the problem, the more you cement it into your reality. You begin to wear it like an identity badge, but let me ask you, what do you think happens when you make your identity out of your problems? You stay stuck, you stay trapped, you stay blind to the possibilities right in front of you. When your mind is consumed with the story of what's wrong, you literally train your brain to look for more of what's wrong. It becomes a filter, like wearing glasses tinted with negativity. Everywhere you look, you'll only notice the obstacles, the setbacks, and the reasons why you can't move forward. The danger is that you stop asking better questions. You stop imagining solutions. You stop believing in a way out. Shifting from problem, focus to solution. Focused is not about pretending the problem doesn't exist. It's about refusing to give it your whole identity, your whole energy, your whole future. It's about saying, yes, this is happening, but what can I do about it right now? That's a question that ignites power inside of you. That's a question that unlocks possibility. When you focus on the problem, you reinforce the past. When you focus on the solution, you create the future. Think about that. Problems anchor you in what already is. Solutions pull you toward what could be. If your life is going to change, it won't be because the problem magically disappeared. It will be because you shifted your focus toward creating something better. Here's the raw truth. The size of your problem isn't the real issue. The real issue is the size of your focus. Some people crumble under small challenges while others rise under massive ones. Why? Because one person obsesses about what's wrong while the other obsesses about what's possible. The quality of your life is a direct reflection of the quality of questions you ask yourself in the face of adversity. If your question is, "Why is this happening to me?" you'll stay trapped in a victim mindset. You'll collect excuses, sympathy, and reasons to stand still. But if your question becomes, "How can I use this? What can I learn? What's the next step I can take?" you shift your identity into a creator. Suddenly, you're not trapped by the storm. You're steering the ship through it. Focusing on solutions doesn't mean you'll never feel fear or doubt. It means you don't let fear and doubt drive the car. You acknowledge them, but you grab the wheel anyway. You say, "I don't know the whole path, but I know the next step." And that's enough to move. That shift in focus breaks the paralysis of overthinking and launches you into progress. When you shift your focus, your physiology changes. Have you noticed that when you complain, your shoulders drop, your breathing gets shallow, your voice weakens? You are literally embodying the problem. But when you start looking for solutions, your energy rises, your chest opens, your voice strengthens, and your brain lights up. You step into a state of possibility, and from that state, answers come faster than you imagined. The truth is, most people don't lack resources, they lack resourcefulness, and resourcefulness is born from a solution, focused mindset. You don't need to have all the money, all the time, all the connections. You need to have the determination to ask, how else can I make this work? Who else can I reach out to? What else haven't I tried? That is where breakthroughs are born. Stop waiting for the problem to shrink before you act. Stop waiting for the perfect conditions. Problems rarely disappear on their own. They dissolve under pressure under your pressure. The more you move, the more you take action, the more momentum you generate, and the smaller that problem becomes in comparison to the power you're bringing to it. Think about the people you admire, the people who inspire you. They're not the ones who had a problem-free life. They're the ones who faced problems but refused to be defined by them. They chose solutions over stories. They chose action over excuses, and because of that choice, they became an example of what's possible. The world doesn't reward you for telling your problem. It rewards you for solving it. And when you become a person who focuses on solutions, you stop draining people with negativity and start inspiring them with possibility. People are drawn to those who radiate resilience, creativity, and determination. That's the energy that builds influence, impact, and legacy. So the challenge for you is this. The next time your mind wants to rehearse the problem, interrupt it. Stop mid-sentence and ask, what can I do about it right now? It doesn't matter how small the answer is. Even one tiny action taken in the direction of a solution shifts your focus, builds your confidence, and pulls you out of the spiral of helplessness. This is not just about solving one problem. It's about rewiring your identity. It's about becoming a person who is known not for their suffering, but for their strength. Not for their excuses, but for their execution. Because once you embody that, problems lose their grip on you. They become fuel, not chains. They become the raw material you use to build something extraordinary. Every time you tell someone your problems just to complain, you give away a piece of your energy. You think you're releasing stress, but what you're really doing is leaking power. You're scattering your focus in every direction, handing out little fragments of your strength to people who can't solve it for you anyway. And when you've given enough of that energy away, what's left? Nothing but exhaustion and frustration. You've got to recognize this. Energy is your most valuable currency. Time is important, yes, but without energy, time is useless. You could have 24 hours in your day, but if you have no energy, you can't build, you can't create, you can't fight, you can't rise. Protecting your energy is the foundation of building a life of strength. That means you stop bleeding it out by repeating your problems to everyone who will listen. There is a massive difference between processing a challenge and feeding it. Processing is when you take a hard look at the situation, ask yourself the right questions, maybe share it with a trusted advisor, and then move forward with a plan. Feeding it is when you retell the story over and over, hoping for pity, hoping someone else's sympathy will make you feel better. That doesn't build you. It drains you. Your energy is either fueling growth or fueling weakness. Every time you vent without purpose, you reinforce the problem and starve the solution. Every time you reclaim that energy and redirect it, you multiply your strength. You start using your emotional fuel to power progress instead of feeding excuses. The reality is, nobody can give you the energy you're searching for. People might encourage you for a moment, but it fades fast. True energy comes from within. It comes from the decision to stop outsourcing your strength and start producing it. That's why reclaiming your power is not optional. It's survival. It's the only way to rise above challenges instead of being buried by them. Think about how you feel after spending time around someone who constantly complains. You feel drained, don't you? You feel like they pulled the life out of you. That's what happens when you do the same thing with your own problems. You're draining yourself every time you repeat the story. The more you do it, the heavier you feel, and the harder it becomes to move forward. Now flip that. Imagine taking that same energy and putting it into creating solutions, building momentum, and taking decisive action. Instead of walking away drained, you walk away fired up, strong, unshakable. That's the power of directing energy back into yourself instead of leaking it out. That's the moment you stop being a victim of your circumstances and start being the architect of your destiny. Reclaiming your power doesn't mean you ignore your pain. It means you refuse to stay in it longer than necessary. You acknowledge it, but then you ask, what can I do with this? How can I channel this frustration into building something new? How can I take the fire of this pain and turn it into fuel for my next chapter? When you do that, the very thing that once drained you becomes the reason you rise higher. Every problem is an invitation. An invitation to either collapse or to grow. If you keep giving your energy away by telling everyone about the mountain you have to climb, you're already exhausted before you take the first step. But if you save that energy, if you channel it inward, you suddenly have the fuel to push, to climb, to rise. That's what separates those who stay stuck from those who break through. People often say they're tired, but what they really are is drained from living in stories that weaken them. The problem is not the lack of sleep. It's the lack of purpose, the lack of alignment, the lack of reclaiming power. When you wake up and decide that your energy belongs to your future, not your excuses, everything changes. Your body changes, your emotions change, your focus sharpens, and you begin to carry yourself like someone who is unstoppable. The moment you reclaim your energy, you send a message to yourself: I am not powerless. I am not fragile. I am not waiting for someone else to fix this. That self message is everything, because your brain and body listen to what you declare. If you declare weakness by repeating your problem, your whole system follows. But if you declare power by taking ownership, your entire being rises to match that declaration. Reclaiming energy means you stop waiting for permission to move forward. You stop expecting others to understand, approve, or validate your journey. You give yourself the permission to fight, to create, to rise, to change. That's how you build momentum. By shifting the energy of your own life back into your own hands. Understand this: people respect strength, not weakness. They respect someone who takes their struggle and transforms it into power. Nobody builds influence by constantly leaking energy. Influence comes from being the one who holds steady when everyone else collapses. Influence comes from being the one who uses their energy to rise, not to complain. And once you reclaim your energy, once you stop giving away your power by telling everyone your problems, you begin to walk differently. You move differently, you speak differently, you carry a fire that can't be ignored, and that fire doesn't just transform you, it ignites everyone around you. The world doesn't need to hear another story about why life is unfair. It doesn't need another speech about how bad the circumstances are. The truth is, most people already have their own storms to face. They're not moved by your problems, they're moved by your progress. What captures attention, what inspires, what creates influence is when someone takes their struggle and flips it into strength. That's when you don't need to tell people about your problem anymore. Your results do the talking for you. You've met people who constantly talk about their challenges. They make every conversation about how hard things are, how nobody understands, how life is against them. After a while, you stop listening, don't you? Because the story never changes. The problem stays the same, and so does the person telling it. But when you meet someone who's gone through fire and turned it into fuel, you can't help but lean in. You want to know how they did it, because their results carry a weight that complaints never will. Results are undeniable. You can argue with someone's words, but you can't argue with their progress. You can question their opinions, but you can't question their growth. That's why results are more powerful than problems. They don't just silence doubt. They rewrite the story. They turn a narrative of weakness into a legacy of strength. When you start focusing on building results instead of broadcasting struggles, your energy shifts completely. Suddenly, you're not seeking attention for what went wrong. You're creating attention for what you made right. You're not leaning on people's sympathy. You're earning people's respect. Respect is infinitely more valuable than pity, because respect inspires, it uplifts, it multiplies. Letting your results speak means you don't need to convince people. You don't need to beg them to see your pain or understand your journey. They see it in your actions. They see it in your transformation. They see it in the discipline you build, the consistency you demonstrate, the achievements you create. That's a language everyone understands, no translation required. Think about athletes, leaders, entrepreneurs, warriors of life who have come out of impossible situations. They didn't spend years telling everyone about how unfair it was. They put their heads down, they worked, they bled, they sacrificed, and when the results showed up, the world couldn't ignore them. That's the path of power. That's the path of those who refuse to stay stuck in their struggles. Your results don't have to be massive at first. Sometimes the smallest step forward says more than 1,000 words about your problem ever could. The courage to change, the courage to move, the courage to rise, it's noticeable. People will feel it. More importantly, you will feel it. And once you taste that feeling of progress, it becomes addictive. It becomes the fuel that keeps you climbing. Every time you take action, every time you move toward results, you shift your identity. You stop being someone defined by what happened to you and start becoming someone defined by what you built from it. That's a powerful transition because identity is destiny. Once you see yourself as the person who creates results, who delivers, who rises, your life will never be the same. Results don't just silence your inner critic, they silence the outer critics too. Because critics feed on weakness, on excuses, on stories that never change. But when you bring undeniable results, their words lose weight. Your progress speaks louder than their doubts. You no longer have to defend yourself because your life becomes the defense. Struggles are temporary, but results are lasting. Your struggle might have started the story, but your results will define the ending. And if you want to inspire others, not through words, but through example, you have to be willing to let go of the need to talk about the pain and instead pour that energy into creating the comeback. Letting results speak doesn't mean you hide your scars. It means you show the strength those scars built. It means when people see you, they see resilience, not excuses. They see power, not pity. They see a fighter, not a victim. And that's the kind of story that actually changes lives. Not because it's spoken, but because it's lived. Every result you create becomes proof. Proof that you're stronger than your circumstances. Proof that you're more than your struggle. Proof that you can rise even when everything in life tried to bury you. And once you start stacking proof, you become unstoppable. Because confidence is nothing more than evidence that you've shown up and delivered before. And you can do it again. The world doesn't need your problems. It needs your results. It needs the example of someone who didn't quit, someone who didn't let pain define them, someone who turned adversity into advantage. That's what people remember. That's what people respect. That's what people follow. Your results become the voice that speaks long after the problem is forgotten. And when you finally stand in that place, when you let your results speak louder than your struggles, you realize something powerful. You never needed to tell people your problems in the first place. Because the comeback was always the story worth telling. The transformation was always the message worth hearing. And the life you built out of it all was the only proof you ever needed.